Welcome to the Growing in Love for Life podcast, where it's all about saving and strengthening your marriage and creating the relationship you really deserve and want to have. And now, from growinginloveforlife.com, relationship and marriage coach and best-selling author, your host, Liam Naden.
This is episode 19 of the Growing in Love for Life podcast. Hi everyone, it's Liam Naden here. Welcome to this week's podcast. And this week we're going to be talking about how to use your past mistakes to save and transform your marriage. And just before we get going, I just want to say a word to thank everybody for all the feedback you're giving me. It's actually really heartening when I get emails from people telling me how really these podcasts and the books I've done as well, and certainly the Save Your Marriage program, how they're really helping people. So I'm really heartened by that. I'm really motivated by that to share this information because I know it really works, and it's wonderful to see when it makes a difference. And of course, since last week when I talked in more depth about my 30-day Save Your Marriage program, I've had a lot of people become interested in that and a lot of people joining in me in that, which is wonderful. And so if I should mention too, if you really want to really learn how to save and transform your marriage in a very quick and powerful way, have a look at my 30-day Save Your Marriage Relationship Transformation Program. And you can find out all the details about that on my website, which is www.liamnaden.com/program. Okay, so let's talk about this rather intriguing topic of how you can actually use your past mistakes to save and transform your marriage. You know, one of the saddest things I see in many marriages, and it's true for many of the people who enroll in my program or who approach me for help, is how past mistakes, things that have happened in the past that one or other, either they or their spouse has done, and they're not only holding them back from having a great marriage, but they're actually destroying their marriage. And I think this is a great tragedy because it really doesn't need to be that way. And in fact, if you know anything about me, you'll know one of the things I've really based all my work on, my research on, is looking at the differences between people in poor and unhappy marriages and people in great ones. One of the big differences I've really discovered is in the way that a couple deals with their mistakes. And the truth is, we all make mistakes. I mean, I think sometimes we believe that people in wonderful marriages, somehow they never make mistakes, or they don't have the same problems that the rest of us have, or somehow they're different, or they're better people than the rest of us. But the truth of the matter is that people who are in great marriages, they still make lots of mistakes, and in fact they often make more mistakes, but it's all about how they deal with them, and that comes down to how they look at them, or to put it another way, the meaning people attach to the word mistakes. It's what they think a mistake actually is. So that's what we're going to deal with today, and I'm going to show you some of the differences and some of the things that you can really do to take on and to create a different meaning to what mistakes are in your marriage, and to therefore deal with them in a much better way. And one of the big messages I want to give you is, and one of the big things I hope you take away from this podcast, is the fact that the quality of your marriage is going to be dependent to a large degree on what you think that making a mistake actually means. So that's what we're going to look at very, very carefully. And what a mistake actually means, it is irrespective of how big we think the mistake is. The big mistake you might have made or your spouse might have made. You know, it could be something as major as, say, as having an affair, and that's probably the biggest one that I come across most often, is that some person has made a mistake by having an affair, which has really harmed their marriage. But it can also be small things that really impact negatively on your marriage, and it could be losing your temper with your spouse, or getting angry, shouting at your spouse, or the opposite, being cold and non-communicative with them, or not considering their feelings. But there's one thing that's certainly true, and that's that mistakes, or how we look at them, can have a very devastating and negative effect on a relationship, on a marriage, and you're probably experiencing that right now. It's probably one of the things that's causing a lot of stress and strain in your relationship. So let's just have a look at some of the effects that looking at mistakes in the wrong way or dealing with them in the wrong way, some of the negative effects that's going to have. And these are some of the things that I've seen, not only in other people's relationships and helping them through my program and through other things, but also in past relationships I myself have had. So I know that these are very real. And the first negative effect, that if you look at mistakes in the wrong way, is that they keep your relationship stuck and in a negative space. And you know, I keep saying this one too, but whatever you focus on, you're going to get more of. So if you focus on trying to get over something, or trying to heal or recover from a mistake, guess what you're going to get more of? You're going to get more trying. More trying to get over it and more trying to heal. Now, I'm not saying here that it doesn't sometimes take some time to forgive or to get over a mistake, because we are really talking about forgiveness here, aren't we? But you can often speed this up very, very quickly, and by doing things in a different way. And this is something that I'm very, very aware of and very conscious of how you can actually do. I've covered it a little bit in some of the previous podcasts. I certainly go into great detail in the Save Your Marriage program. But you know, you don't want to keep your relationship stuck in negativity, and that's what happens when you deal with mistakes in the wrong way. The second thing is that it makes the person who actually made the mistake a weak person. And what is weakness? Anybody who is weak in a relationship in particular is unattractive. And this, I'm sure you will know this feeling. If you've made a mistake and you're trying to get your spouse to forgive you for it, or you're feeling bad about it, you're feeling bad about yourself. And if you're feeling bad about yourself, you're feeling weak. You are being weak, and you're not going to be attractive to your spouse. So that's really important to know, that if you've made a mistake, then dwelling on it or looking at it in the wrong way, or trying to heal yourself or heal your spouse from it, is actually going to have the opposite effect. And later in the podcast, I'm going to show you some of the things that you can do that are the opposite, that are much, much more effective. And the third negative effect of that a mistake in a relationship can often have is that if you look at it in the wrong way, what it does, it creates an imbalance of power in the relationship. So you've obviously got the perpetrator of the mistake. That's the person who made the mistake. So if that was you made a mistake. Maybe you had an affair, or you treated your spouse badly in a certain way, but you made a mistake. And then, of course, on the other hand, your spouse is the person who is the victim, if you like, of that mistake. So what that creates is an imbalance, and that's not good, because the one thing I've noticed about great relationships is that there is a power balance between the two people in it. They're equally balanced. There's this sense of equal power, and that's very, very important in a great marriage, and we'll talk about that a bit later. And the fourth negative consequence of looking at mistakes, or having made mistakes in the wrong way, is that it takes the couple away from the one place where you want to be. And the one place you want to be is right here, right now. And you want to be in a happy, easy, fun, loving relationship right now. Because the truth is, and this is pretty obvious, but mistakes are always things that have happened in the past. But if we keep focusing on overcoming them, it keeps us in the past. And that keeps us away from the only important place, which is right here, right now. Okay, but so let's look at what are mistakes really. Now, when I started to look into this originally, I thought, well, the first place, if you want to know anything, is a good place to start, is the dictionary. So I went and got a dictionary definition of what a mistake is, and this is what the dictionary says, and I quote, it says, a mistake is an error or fault resulting from defective judgment, deficient knowledge, or carelessness. An error or fault resulting from defective judgment, deficient knowledge, or carelessness. So let's have a look at this and see what this really means, and see what it can tell us about how we might be able to use mistakes in a positive way in our marriage rather than a negative way. So the first thing it says, it's defective. So that means it's something that comes from not being perfect. Okay, that's pretty obvious. But here's some good news for you, and many people seem to have forgotten about this one. No one on the planet is perfect. So that means you, it means your spouse, it means everybody else. So in fact, being defective is actually an integral part of being human. So we can say that it's natural to make mistakes. The second thing was deficient knowledge. So mistakes come about as a result of things we just simply don't know. So we don't know how to react in a situation or to a particular event because it might be something totally new that we've never experienced before. So we don't know the right thing to do. And of course, another thing about being human is all of us don't have perfect knowledge. So if you're deficient in knowledge, if you don't know something, then obviously the chances are you're going to make a mistake when you're faced with a new situation. And the third point it made in the definition was carelessness. Okay, so we make a mistake when we're not thinking or paying attention. And, in the case of something rash, such as maybe losing our temper or even connecting inappropriately with a third person, such as having an affair or even an emotional affair, is what happens is our emotions determine what we do. And that's human as well. We're not using our logical mind to make decisions. So that's one of the things that happens when we do that, is we can become careless. And we just do things without really thinking about it, often reacting rather than really thinking about it, and that's perfectly human. So those are three important things about what the dictionary says a mistake is, but it also has a couple of underlying things about what a mistake isn't. And these are things that weren't in the definition, but which are very important. Firstly, obviously, a mistake isn't intentional. So it's not something that we go out and do in a logical way with the express intention of hurting our spouse or damaging our marriage. Alright, so and often we don't see the consequences, so it's not intentional. And the second thing about a mistake is that it's not permanent. It's usually a one-off thing. So it's either a single incident that might have happened once, or it could have even been a situation that happened for a period of time, such as a negative attitude towards your spouse, or even, say, having an affair. But the point is, there's a beginning and an end, and it has ended. And the damage really occurs is when we keep it going, when we keep the memory of the mistake going, of what happened, long after the mistake has actually ended. But that's not what a mistake is. A mistake really isn't something that has an ongoing permanent thing. It has a beginning and an end. Alright, so that's given us a useful starting point about what mistakes actually are. And often what happens is even just some of the things that I've covered, maybe for you it's starting to shift your beliefs a little bit about what a mistake actually means, and therefore what you'll do about it if you've made a mistake. But if you're finding that a mistake that you've made in the past is having a negative effect on your marriage, and maybe the memory is still causing hurt and pain for you and your spouse, then I want to give you some ideas on how you can change that. So here are some things you can do that can not only help remove the pain of what happened, of what you did, but you can also use these things to actually transform and help your marriage. And remember, I said right at the beginning, one of the things about a great marriage is that they use mistakes in a positive rather than a negative way. These are things that you will find in a great marriage that you're not going to find in an unhappy one. So, as I've said many times before, it makes sense if you want to save your marriage, if you want to create a wonderfully deep, loving relationship, which is totally possible, I believe, of any relationship, no matter where it is right now. If it has been in a wonderful place before, it's certainly possible to recreate that wonderful place again. But you just need to stop doing the things that are common to poor relationships, and you need to start doing the things that you find in great relationships. Sure, that makes total common sense. So here are the things that you can do to change your attitudes about mistakes and to change what they mean and to use them to transform your marriage in a really positive way. Now, the first thing to do is to acknowledge that you've made a mistake. And that's not only to your spouse, but it's also to yourself. So it simply means just say to yourself, say to your wife or husband, look, I made a mistake. And that's it. And I don't mean you need to justify yourself, you don't need to come up with reasons, or you don't need to have any long sort of analysis of why you acted that way or what it actually means. No, just say to yourself and say to your spouse, look, I made a mistake. I'm sorry that I did it, but it was a mistake. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the first thing, really important. The second thing is to stop apologizing for having made that mistake. Now look, if you make a mistake, obviously you should apologize for it. But once is enough, seriously. Remember our definition of what a mistake is, or the dictionary definition. It's an error or fault resulting from defective judgment, deficient knowledge, or carelessness. And remember, it's something that's human. It happened. It's in the past. So stop feeling bad that it happened, and stop thinking that by continually reminding your spouse and yourself that you're sorry it happened, that it's going to make any positive difference. It won't. All it's going to do, if you keep doing that, is just distract you from doing and thinking the things that are really going to make a positive difference to your marriage. So stop apologizing for it. I'm sure you've already done it once at least. You don't need to do it again. Promise yourself you will no longer apologize for that mistake. And the third thing is, and again this is very powerful, don't be responsible for your spouse's feelings. You know, look, the minute anyone takes responsibility for anyone else's feelings, you're never going to get true harmony in a relationship. And in fact, I really believe that learning to take full and total responsibility for our own feelings is one of the greatest lessons in achieving happiness and fulfillment in our whole life. It's one of the best things you can ever learn. So, you know, don't take away that opportunity from your husband or your wife. And sure, it's going to be hard. They might keep blaming you. They might keep wanting to make you feel guilty. They could well even continue to get emotional about it, and they might even threaten your relationship with it. And this often happens. I don't know if I can forgive you for what you did in the past, so I don't know if we can carry on. It might mean because you did that, it might mean the end of our relationship. You know, that happens a lot. But at the end of the day, and this is the honest truth here, this is all their problem. And you're not going to see any true progress towards creating a really happy marriage until you and your spouse both start learning to take responsibility for your own feelings. Okay, look, they're an adult. You're an adult, they're an adult. They can learn to be responsible, but only if you don't keep taking responsibility away from them. So allow them to learn how it is, or to learn how to be responsible for their own feelings, and you learn how to be responsible for your own feelings. And if that's all that you did, your relationship would be absolutely transformed. Okay, so the fourth thing is, look for the other side of the mistake. Now, in everything there are two sides. There is definitely a positive side to you having made a mistake. So start to look for it and ask yourself, you know, if I wanted to, what could I see that was good about me having made that mistake? What have I learned? What has it taught me? How could I use what I've learned to improve our relationship? And what good things could now happen in our marriage as a result of me having made that mistake? Because, you know, often mistakes are small reminders of what's not right in our relationship, and they, if you like, they give you a bit of an advance warning on something that perhaps if you carried on doing that, could have had really disastrous effects on your marriage. So think, for instance, you know, if you get angry with your husband or your wife and you lash out at them, you know, you realize afterwards that's a mistake, I shouldn't have done that. But why have you done that? Maybe you're stressed. Maybe you're not getting your real needs met in your relationship, in your marriage. So it's a sign of an underlying cause. So, and maybe if you realize that, and you can ask yourself what that actually means, then you can go on to look at, well, how do I get my emotional needs met in my marriage? You know, perhaps if you had an affair with somebody else and it was a mistake. All right, what does that actually mean? If you look, what's the positive side of having had an affair? And I've talked about this in more detail in a previous podcast. We talked about affairs, but the fact is, you know, an affair is usually, you could look at it positively and say, well, it's a good thing I had this brief fling because it pointed out that there's not enough fun and intimacy in our marriage, and that we've stopped doing the things together that used to make it fun. And I've stopped appreciating my wife or my husband for the wonderful person that they are. So it's like a wake-up call. It's been good that it happened, because it's been a wake-up call for me to really put a lot more effort and awareness into those things that are going to make our marriage great, rather than just letting it slide quietly. So ask yourself those questions. You'll be amazed what you come up with. And the next thing is, and this is what we're going to do now, I think you need to create a new definition for the word mistake. Now remember the old definition. This is the dictionary definition. And I think it's the definition that nearly all of us think about when we think of the word mistake, which is an error or fault resulting from defective judgment, deficient knowledge, or carelessness. But when you think about it, that's quite a negative thing, an error or a fault. That sounds like something that you're doing wrong. But in actual fact, and this is one thing that I've learnt from looking not only at people with great relationships, but with people with great lives, is they have actually a completely different definition of the word mistake. And their definition, in summary, and this is what I've come up with, but I believe it really sums up the definition great people have and happy marriages have for a mistake, and that is, a mistake is a learning opportunity and a gift I have been given to make my relationship and my life better. How's that for a definition of the word mistake? A learning opportunity and a gift I've been given to make my relationship and my life better. Now, if you really look at your mistakes in that way, you can see that they're a huge opportunity to learn something new, to grow, to improve your life. You know, they're things that are going to make you a better person, a better partner, for you to have a better relationship. And if you really think about some of the mistakes, if you like, in other areas of your life that you've made in the past, can you see that's true, that they really are learning opportunities? That's how we learn, is through our mistakes. You know, we don't learn to ride a bicycle by reading a book, getting on it and doing it perfectly. We fall off and go, oh, what did I do wrong? I'll try it again. That wasn't right either. I'll try it again. So that's how we learn. So it's a learning opportunity. So I think that's a wonderful definition of the word mistake. And it really does have the power to transform your life. So just that definition again, a mistake is a learning opportunity and a gift I've been given to make my relationship and my life better. And the more you can look at your past mistakes and see them in that life, the more you'll realize that's absolutely true. All right, the next thing, and the last thing, is to expect more mistakes. And if you think about that definition, it's a learning opportunity and a gift. You can almost look forward to making more mistakes. And again, this is something that I see in people who've achieved a lot in their life. They actually see things positively when they make a mistake. And you know, if you know that you're human, you know you're going to make more mistakes. It's inevitable that you're going to make more mistakes. That's just wired into who we are. So you've got a choice here. Do you either take the negative definition and see it as an error or a fault, or do you see it as a positive learning opportunity, something that you can use to improve your life and improve your marriage? And as I say, in a funny sort of way, you can almost look forward to your mistakes. Now, you've probably heard the story about Thomas Edison when he invented the light bulb. Very, very famous story, and the numbers seem to vary, but he tried hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways to make a light bulb work, and he couldn't get it to work. And he was interviewed. Obviously, eventually he did, but it was something like well over 1,000 different attempts to get a light bulb to work before he actually hit on the right thing to do. And he was asked by a reporter, weren't you ever discouraged? Didn't you ever think all those things that you did wrong, all the things that you tried that weren't right, all the mistakes that you made? And he said, no, all I ever thought about was when something didn't work, in other words, was a mistake, was I'm one step closer to finding the one that does work. Now, wouldn't that be a wonderful attitude we could have about our mistakes in our marriage, the mistakes we make? If I can see that as a learning opportunity, something to learn from, I'm one step closer to creating that fantastic relationship that I really want to have. Because the real point is that, like everything in our marriage and in our life, it's not actually what happens that determines how happy we are. And at the end of the day, that's what we want, isn't it? We want to be happy. But it's not actually what happens, but it's about the meaning that we attach to what happens. So it's what we think it means, because what we think it means, whether it's positive or negative, creates a different emotional response in us, and it can either make us happy or it can make us sad and unhappy. So that's really the key. And if you can change what your past mistakes actually mean, if you can really look at them and see them from my new and positive definition rather than the negative one, and see you're going to start to act quite differently. And once you start to act quite differently, you're going to get different results as well. You're going to get quite different results. So that's the key. Once you start to think different things, you start to do different things. And once you start to do different things, you start to get different results. And that is so true of our marriage. So I hope this has given you some ideas to think about how, if you've made mistakes in your marriage in the past, and I'm pretty sure you have, I mean, I think everybody has, but if they're really causing some pain, and they're causing you and your spouse to drift apart or move apart or want to end your marriage, or simply not have that wonderful, deep, loving relationship that you really want to have, one that's really based on true trust and intimacy. And remember, one of the elements of trust is being allowed to make mistakes. If you know that you can make mistakes, and if you allow your spouse to make mistakes, there's a different level of trust there, or there's a level of trust there that is absolutely amazing. But what that depends upon is having the right beliefs about what mistakes actually are. And I actually handle this whole thing about mistakes, how to deal with past hurts, the pain from the past, how to stop them, how to not only stop them from harming your relationship and destroying your marriage, but actually using them to transform your marriage. I cover these in a lot of detail in my Save Your Marriage program, and you probably know a little bit about this already, but in case you don't, it's a 30-day program. It's really my complete marriage transformation course. It's where I get to work with you personally, if you want, to help you get your marriage off the rocks and back into smooth sailing waters, back on the ocean again. So, just to use a bit of a cliche perhaps, but if you really want a faster, more powerful way to really understand your relationship, your marriage, what it really is, and to turn into something really special, then I think it's something you should really consider. And you can find out all the details at my website, liamnaden.com/program, PROGRAM. And I'd love to share that information with you and help you too. And remember, you can also listen to my other podcast episodes. This is episode 19, so there's a few there if you want to listen to them, if you haven't already. And that's at my website, liamnaden.com, and feel free to drop me a line by email anytime as well. I'd love to hear from you and hear if these ideas are helping you as well, or if you've got any questions about the Save Your Marriage program as well. Well, unfortunately, we're pretty well out of time. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. I really enjoy sharing this information. I love hearing from people, and I hope you'll take some of this information. And as I say, if you really want to take it to, if you really want to turbocharge your results, consider my Save Your Marriage program. I'd really love to have you join me on that. So I really wish you every success with your marriage. I hope this information has helped. Because remember, there's only one sort of marriage worth having, and that's a great one. And I wish that for you. Bye for now.